Imagine this. You go to bed at night feeling perfectly fine. You kiss your spouse goodnight. Maybe you check the lock on the door. Maybe you even say to yourself, "Tomorrow I'll finally get to that little project in the garden." But then, the next morning, everything is different. You try to get up, but one side of your body doesn't respond. You open your mouth, but the words won't come out. The face in the mirror is yours, but you barely recognize it. And when you look into the eyes of the person you love most, you can see the fear in them because you can't even say their name. This is what a stroke does. One moment you're you, the next you're trapped in your own body, watching life move on without you. And here's the part nobody tells you. Many strokes aren't caused by big accidents or terrible diseases. They're triggered by everyday movements. Simple, ordinary things most people over 60 do every single day. But before we go deeper into this life-saving information, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. Is it morning, afternoon, or evening where you are? And how old are you? Because whether you're 60, 70, or 80, what I'm about to share could literally mean the difference between living independently or living with permanent disability. Now, I should tell you who I am and why you should even listen to me. My name is Dr. Insert Name, and for more than 30 years I've been treating stroke patients. I've seen thousands of lives turned upside down. And here's what still shocks me to this day. So many of the most heartbreaking cases don't come from reckless behavior or smoking or heavy drinking. They come from ordinary people doing ordinary movements, things they thought were safe, things they'd been doing for years without ever realizing how dangerous they had become with age. That's why this message is so urgent, because what worked for your body at 40 or 50 can actually become life-threatening at 70. Your blood vessels change, your reflexes change, and without this knowledge, you might be setting yourself up for a stroke without even knowing it. Today, I'm going to reveal 9 everyday movements that could silently put your brain at risk. And just as important, I'll show you the safe alternatives so you can keep moving, keep active, and keep living without fear. This isn't about making you fragile. It's about making you informed. Because the truth is, one wrong movement can unravel everything you've built over a lifetime. But wise, careful movement can protect your brain for years of clarity, independence, and joy. So grab a glass of water, sit somewhere comfortable, and stay with me until the very end. Because I promise you, what you're about to learn could save your life or the life of someone you love. Now, before I begin breaking down these 9 movements, it's important that you understand something about how the body changes as we age. Because unless you see the bigger picture, some of the warnings I'm about to give you might sound almost unbelievable. You see, when you were 40, maybe even 50, your blood vessels were flexible, elastic, and strong. They could handle quick shifts in pressure, sudden changes in position, even the occasional heavy lift. But after the age of 60, those same vessels become stiffer. Think of them like old garden hoses left out in the sun. They don't bend the same way. They don't absorb pressure the same way. And when the pressure builds suddenly, they're far more likely to crack or clog. This is why something that felt easy and harmless 20 years ago can suddenly become dangerous today. Your body is not weaker. It's just different. And if you don't respect that difference, your brain could pay the price. Another thing many people don't realize is how stroke risk can creep up silently. Sometimes strokes don't hit all at once. They form slowly, like a storm building on the horizon. Doctors even call them silent strokes. A small clot may start forming when blood doesn't flow properly or when a vessel is overstressed by movement. At first, you might just feel dizzy for a moment, or maybe you lose your balance for a second. You brush it off, tell yourself, "I just stood up too quickly." But what you don't see is that deep inside your brain, damage may already be starting. And here's where it gets scary. Once that clot forms, it can break loose at any time. Maybe in the middle of the night, maybe while you're walking to the kitchen, maybe while you're playing with your grandchild. That's when the big stroke hits, and by then it's too late to reverse the damage. I can't tell you how many patients I've treated who said the same thing before their stroke. "Doctor, I thought I was doing something good for myself. I thought I was keeping active." And yes, staying active is absolutely essential. But it's not about moving more. It's about moving wisely. That's why what I'm going to share with you today is so critical. These 9 everyday movements are the hidden triggers that catch so many seniors by surprise. And unless you know what they are and how to adapt them safely, you're playing Russian roulette with your brain every time you move. So let's start with the very first one. It seems harmless, almost laughably simple. But for seniors, it can be a silent killer. Let's begin with the first everyday movement that can trigger a stroke in seniors. And I'll warn you, this one is going to surprise you because it's something many people have been told is healthy. It's the simple forward bend. You know the move. Bending down to touch your toes, bending over to pick something up off the floor, leaning forward to reach a low drawer, even putting on your socks while standing. Most of us were taught from childhood that touching our toes is good for flexibility. Some seniors even start their mornings with a routine of forward bends because they've heard it keeps the back loose. But here's the hidden danger. When you bend forward quickly, especially with your head dropping down, blood rushes away from your brain. In younger people, the body adjusts instantly. But after 60, the reflex that keeps blood flowing steadily to your brain, the baroreflex, becomes less sensitive. That means the moment you bend forward, your brain is starved of oxygen, even if it's just for a few seconds. And those few seconds matter. That drop in oxygen can make the blood in your vessels sluggish. Sluggish blood is more likely to clot. And that clot can lodge itself in a tiny vessel, setting the stage for a stroke. Let me tell you about one of my patients, a retired teacher named Edward Millstone. Edward was 74. Every morning before his coffee, he did a set of toe touches. He'd been doing them since his 20s and thought it was the secret to staying limber. One morning he bent forward, felt a wave of dizziness but brushed it off. "Just a head rush," he told himself. Later that day, while gardening, he collapsed. By the time his wife got him to the hospital, the damage was done. The stroke left him permanently disabled. His sharp mind was trapped in a body that wouldn't respond the way he wanted. Now, I share Edward's story not to frighten you, but to open your eyes, because he thought he was doing something good for his body, when in reality his morning routine was slowly putting him in harm's way. So what should you do instead? The key is not to avoid bending altogether. You'll always need to bend to live your daily life, but to bend wisely. Move slowly. Give your body time to adjust. If you need to reach something on the floor, hold on to a chair or counter for support. If you're putting on socks or shoes, sit down instead of balancing on one leg while bending forward. And most importantly, if you ever feel dizzy, stop immediately. That's your brain's way of sending out a distress signal. Don't ignore it. This small change can mean the difference between a safe movement and one that puts your brain at risk. Now that you understand the hidden danger in something as simple as toe touches, let's move to another movement that has become very popular among seniors looking for gentle exercise. But in truth, it can be devastating for the aging brain. The second movement we need to talk about is one that has become incredibly popular in recent years, especially among seniors, who want to stay active without putting too much strain on their joints. I'm talking about yoga. Now, don't get me wrong, yoga can be wonderful. It improves balance, eases stress, and keeps the body flexible. But here's the part nobody tells you. Not all yoga poses are safe after the age of 60. In fact, some of the most common ones can be extremely dangerous for the brain. Specifically, I'm talking about inverted poses, positions where the head is below the heart. Think about poses like legs up the wall, downward dog, or even simple forward folds in yoga classes. These moves might look gentle, but inside the aging body, something very serious happens. When the head drops below the heart, blood rushes directly into the skull. For a younger person, the vessels in the brain are strong and flexible enough to handle that sudden surge of pressure. But for seniors, those same vessels are fragile, stiff, and in some cases, already lined with tiny cracks or deposits of plaque. That sudden rush of blood can cause one of two things. A vessel may spasm and cut off circulation, or worse, it may rupture. And when a vessel bursts inside the brain, the result is a hemorrhagic stroke. I'll never forget a patient of mine named Evelyn Thomas. Evelyn was 74, an art teacher who had recently retired. She loved her gentle yoga classes and told me she felt younger every time she went. One afternoon during a class, she moved into a simple inverted position. Nothing extreme, just a pose where her head dipped below her heart. Suddenly, she felt a sharp, stabbing pain in her head. Within minutes, her vision blurred. By the time she reached the hospital, she had suffered a hemorrhagic stroke. Evelyn survived, but she lost part of her vision and struggled with speech for the rest of her life. This wasn't a woman who smoked, drank heavily, or lived recklessly. She was careful. She thought she was choosing the healthy path. But that one small movement changed her life forever. Now, I'm not saying yoga itself is bad. In fact, for many seniors, it can be a wonderful practice. But you need to make adjustments. If you're over 60, avoid poses where your head dips below your heart. That means skipping downward dog, headstands, shoulder stands, or even forward folds that put your head close to the floor. Instead, choose seated alternatives. There are plenty of safe, senior-friendly yoga poses that focus on gentle stretching, breathing, and balance without putting your brain at risk. And here's another tip. Make sure your instructor has real experience working with older adults. Not every yoga teacher is trained in geriatric safety, and the wrong guidance could push you into a dangerous position. Remember, the goal isn't to avoid movement. It's to move wisely. The right stretches and postures can keep your body feeling strong, but the wrong ones can do irreversible damage. So if you've been doing yoga, don't give it up, but do it smart. Protect your brain. Modify the poses. Use a chair for seated stretches. Keep your head above your heart. And always listen to your body. Now, if yoga caught you by surprise, wait until you hear about the next one. It's something almost every senior does, not in a gym or studio, but in daily life. It seems harmless, lifting groceries, carrying boxes, or even picking up your grandchild. But done the wrong way, it can unleash a pressure surge that breaks open fragile vessels in the brain. Now let's talk about one of the most deceptive dangers for seniors. It doesn't happen in a yoga studio or during a special workout. It happens in kitchens, garages, and grocery stores every single day. I'm talking about heavy lifting. Maybe it's carrying a box of canned goods, lifting a heavy laundry basket, or picking up your grandchild for a hug. On the surface, these are simple acts of love and independence. But here's the hidden danger. When you lift something heavy, your body naturally holds its breath for a moment. Doctors call this the Valsalva maneuver. It's that instinctive bracing we all do without thinking, gritting your teeth, holding your breath, and straining to lift. And when you do that, your blood pressure shoots up like a rocket. Inside your brain, fragile blood vessels are suddenly under tremendous stress. That surge of pressure can crack the wall of a weakened vessel, or it can dislodge a tiny piece of plaque that's been sitting quietly in your arteries. Once that piece breaks loose, it travels straight to the brain, where it can block blood flow and cause a stroke in an instant. I remember a patient named George Pickett. George was 82, a retired firefighter. He was strong, independent, and prided himself on never asking for help. One afternoon, he was carrying a heavy box of canned goods into the house. Halfway through, he suddenly collapsed. What happened? That moment of straining caused his blood pressure to spike, dislodging a clot that shot straight to his middle cerebral artery. George survived, but the stroke left him dependent on a walker for the rest of his life. For a man who had once run into burning buildings to save others, the hardest part was needing help just to get across the room. George's story is heartbreaking, but it's not unique. I've seen this same scenario play out again and again, seniors trying to stay independent, pushing themselves, and unknowingly pushing their blood vessels past the breaking point. So what can you do instead? The solution isn't to stop lifting altogether. You're always going to need to carry groceries, laundry, or other household items. The key is to lift wisely. First, never hold your breath when lifting. Breathe continuously. Inhale before you lift. Exhale slowly as you rise. This keeps pressure from building dangerously inside your head. Second, use tools whenever possible. A rolling cart, a dolly, even a sturdy laundry basket with wheels can save you from risky strain. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Kneading a hand with heavy objects isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Finally, remember that what feels modest to you may not be modest for your blood vessels. Even 10 or 15 pounds can create a dangerous spike inside your brain. It's not about how strong your muscles feel. It's about how vulnerable your vessels are. Protecting your independence doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means making choices that keep you safe enough to stay independent for years to come. Now we've talked about bending forward, we've talked about yoga inversions, and we've talked about lifting heavy weights. But there's another everyday movement that almost everyone does without thinking. It seems so ordinary that people laugh when I first mention it. But in truth, it's one of the most common hidden stroke triggers of all, and it happens every single time you stand up too quickly. The fourth dangerous movement is one of the simplest and most common. You do it several times a day, and most of the time you don't even think about it. But for seniors, it can be one of the most dangerous things for the brain. I'm talking about standing up too quickly. Picture this. You've been sitting comfortably in your recliner watching television, or maybe at the kitchen table finishing a meal. Then suddenly you stand up fast. In that instant, gravity pulls blood away from your brain, and your body has to work quickly to push it back up. When you were younger, your cardiovascular system adjusted instantly. But after 60, those adjustments slow down. The vessels are stiffer, the reflexes are weaker, and the heart doesn't pump quite as forcefully. The result? A sudden drop in blood flow to the brain. For a second or two, the brain is starved of oxygen. You may feel dizzy, lightheaded, or even black out for a moment. And while that might seem harmless, it's actually the perfect storm for stroke formation. Low oxygen levels encourage tiny clots to form, and if one of those clots breaks free, it can travel to the brain and cause a devastating blockage. Let me tell you about Carol Jensen. Carol was 79, a retired school principal. She prided herself on keeping active, and part of her daily routine included sit-to-stand exercises. She had read somewhere that quickly moving from sitting to standing would keep her legs strong and her balance sharp. So she practiced it faithfully several times a day. But one morning, after a round of rapid sit-to-stand drills, she suddenly slurred her words and felt weakness on her left side. Carol was rushed to the hospital, where doctors confirmed she had suffered a stroke. Though she survived, she was left with permanent speech difficulties and memory problems that changed her life forever. The sad truth is that Carol thought she was doing the right thing. She wasn't being reckless. She wasn't ignoring her health. But she didn't know how dangerous sudden standing could be for her aging brain. So how can you protect yourself? The answer is surprisingly simple. First, never stand up in a hurry. Take your time. When you're ready to get up, place your hands on the arms of the chair or on a nearby surface for support. Move slowly, and once you're upright, pause for a moment before walking away. This gives your body the chance to adjust and restore steady blood flow to your brain. Second, take deep, steady breaths before and during the movement. Breathing deeply helps maintain circulation and keeps oxygen flowing where it's needed most. And finally, don't be embarrassed to use support when standing. Whether it's a cane, a walker, or just holding onto a table, support is not weakness. It's wisdom. Remember, the goal isn't to prove how independent you are. The goal is to stay safe and keep your independence for as long as possible. Standing up is something you'll do countless times every day. By making it a slow, mindful action instead of a rushed one, you remove one of the most overlooked stroke triggers in daily life. Now let's move to another hidden risk. This time, it doesn't happen inside your home. It happens when you step outside, and the weather itself becomes your enemy. For seniors, one of the most deceptively dangerous times to move is when you're walking in the heat. The fifth dangerous movement doesn't happen in the gym or in your living room. It happens outside, on what seems like a perfectly ordinary walk. Many seniors take daily walks for their health, and walking truly is one of the best exercises you can do. But here's where things get risky. Walking in hot, humid weather, especially without proper hydration. Now you might be thinking, I've been walking my whole life. How could a little heat cause a stroke? The truth is, once you're past 60, your body doesn't regulate fluids the way it used to. Your sense of thirst becomes weaker. Your kidneys don't hold water as efficiently. And if you're on common medications like diuretics or blood pressure pills, your body loses fluids even faster. That means you can become dangerously dehydrated without even realizing it. What does dehydration do to your blood? It makes it thicker. Think of it like this. When you're well hydrated, your blood flows smoothly, like water through a pipe. But when you're dehydrated, your blood becomes sticky, sluggish, more like syrup than water. That stickiness makes it far easier for clots to form. And once a clot forms, it's only a matter of time before it blocks circulation to the brain and causes a stroke. Let me tell you about Harold Dunn. Harold was 84, a retired postal worker. Rain or shine, hot or cold, he insisted on his daily walk. His daughter begged him not to go out in 90-degree heat one July afternoon, but Harold was stubborn. "I've walked every day of my life," he said, "and I'm not stopping now." He came home from his walk exhausted and dizzy, but brushed it off as nothing. That night, while he slept, a clot formed in his thickened blood. By morning, Harold had suffered a stroke that left him unable to dress or feed himself without help. His story is a painful reminder that even something as healthy as walking can become dangerous when the conditions are wrong. So how do you keep yourself safe? First and foremost, hydrate before and after every walk. Don't wait until you feel thirsty, because by the time you do, dehydration has already set in. Drink a glass of water before you leave the house, and another when you return. On hotter days, add a pinch of electrolyte powder or drink water, with a small splash of fruit juice to help your body hold on to the fluid. Second, avoid walking during the hottest parts of the day. In most places, that means skipping the late morning to mid-afternoon window, when heat and humidity are at their worst. Instead, walk early in the morning or later in the evening when it's cooler. And finally, listen to your body. If you start feeling dizzy, weak, or unusually tired during a walk, stop immediately. Find shade, sit down, and sip water slowly. Those aren't just aging symptoms. They're your brain warning you that it's in danger. Walking is wonderful, but only when done safely. By respecting the heat and respecting your body's changing needs, you can keep walking for years to come without putting your brain at risk. Now, we've covered bending, yoga, lifting, standing, and even walking in the heat. But the next movement is something people often do to loosen up stiffness. It seems harmless, even therapeutic, yet it can rip open one of the most delicate arteries leading to your brain. I'm talking about neck circles and jerky neck rotations. The sixth dangerous movement is one you may have done this morning without even thinking. You wake up, your neck feels stiff, and you gently roll your head in a big circle, trying to ease the tension. Maybe you saw it in a magazine. Maybe a fitness instructor once recommended it. Or maybe it's just a habit you've had for years. But here's the truth. Full neck circles and jerky rotations can be one of the most dangerous movements a senior can make. Here's why. At the base of your neck, running up through the bones of your spine, are two delicate vessels called the vertebral arteries. These arteries are like hidden highways that deliver blood to the back of your brain. They're small, fragile, and in seniors, often already weakened by years of wear and tear. When you roll your neck in a big circle, especially with sudden or jerky force, those arteries can actually stretch and tear. Doctors call this a vertebral artery dissection. When that tear happens, blood begins to pool and clot at the site. And once that clot forms, it only takes one wrong move for it to break free and travel directly to your brain. The result is a posterior circulation stroke, a type of stroke that can affect balance, vision, coordination, and even your ability to swallow. I'll never forget a man named Dennis Lyle. Dennis was 72, a retired band director. He loved music and often joked that he had conducted more concerts than he could count. One morning, he decided to follow advice he had read in a magazine. Loosen up your neck with big, slow circles. He began rolling his head around and suddenly felt a sharp pain behind his ear, almost like something snapping. Within minutes, he was dizzy, couldn't walk straight, and soon collapsed. Dennis had torn his vertebral artery. The clot that formed triggered a stroke that left him bound to a wheelchair, unable to conduct again. Dennis's tragedy started with something so small, something so ordinary, something he thought was helping him. And that's what makes this risk so frightening, because so many seniors believe neck rolls are gentle exercise, when in reality they're ticking time bombs. So what should you do instead? First, never roll your neck in full circles. That movement puts your arteries under twisting, unnatural strain. Instead, keep your movements small and controlled. Gentle side-to-side turns are fine. Slowly tilt your head forward and back, but never force it to the extreme. The goal is to ease stiffness, not push your neck to its limits. Second, remember that your neck is not meant to be stretched like a rubber band. If you're feeling stiff, the safest way to loosen up is with light heat, gentle massage, or simple posture adjustments, like sitting up straighter or adjusting your pillow. These methods improve circulation without putting fragile arteries at risk. And finally, listen to your body. If you ever feel sharp pain, dizziness, or unusual pressure while moving your neck, stop immediately. That's not just stiffness, that's your body warning you. Protecting your brain sometimes means letting go of old habits that no longer serve you. Neck circles might feel innocent, but for seniors, they can open the door to a life-altering stroke. Choose gentler movements, and your neck and your brain will thank you. Now, if this one surprised you, wait until you hear the next. Because it's not a stretch or a bend or a lift. It's actually a popular form of exercise, one that's been marketed as the ultimate way to stay young, fit, and sharp. But for seniors, those sudden bursts of effort can be devastating. I'm talking about high-intensity interval training. The seventh dangerous movement is one that has exploded in popularity in recent years. You've probably heard of it. High-intensity interval training, or HIIT for short. Fitness programs, DVDs, even YouTube channels promote it as the miracle workout for burning fat, staying young, and keeping the heart strong. But here's the problem. While it might work for younger bodies, for seniors, HIIT can be a stroke waiting to happen. What makes HIIT so dangerous? It's the nature of the workout itself. HIIT relies on sudden bursts of maximum effort, short, intense sprints of activity, followed by quick rests, then another burst and another. For a 20 or 30-year-old, the body's blood vessels are elastic and strong. They can stretch to handle those pressure surges. But once you're past 60, your arteries are stiffer, your vessel walls are thinner, and many are lined with fragile plaques. When you go from resting to maximum effort in a split second, your blood pressure spikes dramatically. That spike puts enormous stress on your arteries. It can rupture a plaque, sending a clot racing straight to the brain, or it can cause a weakened vessel wall to crack. In either case, the result can be catastrophic. Let me share the story of Donald Whitaker. Donald was 74, a retired steel worker. He was tough, proud, and didn't want to slow down just because of his age. When a friend recommended a DVD called Hit Moves for Seniors, he thought it was perfect. The workouts were short, intense, and promised results fast. Donald threw himself into it. For the first few sessions, he felt tired, but also proud. But one morning, during a particularly intense routine, he suddenly collapsed. The violent surge of pressure had dislodged a clot from his carotid artery, sending it straight into his brain. Donald survived, but the stroke left him in assisted living, with memory gaps so severe that some days he couldn't even remember his daughter's name. Donald's story is tragic, but sadly it's not unusual. I've seen this pattern again and again. Seniors trying to push hard because they've been told it's the way to stay young, not realizing that the sudden stress is tearing their vessels apart. So what's the safer path? The key is to replace intensity with consistency. Instead of sudden bursts of energy, choose steady, continuous movement. Walking at a comfortable pace, Tai Chi, water aerobics, resistance bands, all of these give you the benefits of exercise, without the dangerous pressure spikes. Your brain doesn't need you to sprint. What it thrives on is a steady supply of oxygen, delivered calmly and consistently. And here's something else. Do not let anyone shame you into thinking slower exercise is less valuable. The truth is, slow, steady movement protects your vessels, protects your brain, and extends your independence far more than a short-lived attempt at high intensity ever could. So the next time someone tells you to push harder, remember this. Pushing harder might push you straight into a stroke. Moving steadily, wisely, and safely is what will truly keep you strong. Now, we've talked about intensity, but let's turn to another hidden danger, something many people do at the start of exercise. You've probably been told it's the right way to begin, but for seniors, it's the wrong way entirely. I'm talking about stretching cold muscles before warming up. The eighth dangerous movement is one that almost every fitness book and class has preached for decades. Before you exercise, you're told, stretch first, loosen up those muscles. It sounds like good advice, but for seniors, stretching cold muscles before warming up is not just unhelpful, it can actually be dangerous for your brain. Here's why. When you wake up in the morning or sit for a long time, your blood vessels are in a constricted state. They're tighter, narrower, and less flexible than they will be once your body is warmed up. Now imagine forcing those cold vessels to suddenly expand as you stretch. The result is what I call vascular shock, a mismatch between what the muscles are demanding and what the blood vessels are prepared to deliver. That sudden mismatch makes blood flow turbulent and irregular. And turbulent blood flow is one of the main conditions where clots are born. Once that clot forms, it doesn't always cause symptoms right away. Sometimes it just sits there, lurking, waiting for the wrong moment to break free. And when it does, it can travel straight to the brain and trigger a stroke. I'll tell you about a woman named Eileen Granger. Eileen was 78, a retired piano teacher. She loved her morning routine, a few gentle stretches before heading out for her daily walk. She thought she was doing the right thing, warming up the way she had always been told. But what she didn't know was that her pre-walk static stretching was actually stressing her aging vessels. One morning after her walk, she felt weakness in her right hand and struggled to find words. At the hospital, doctors discovered she'd suffered a small parietal lobe stroke. From that day on, Eileen needed a walker to move around, and playing piano, the passion of her life, was no longer possible. Eileen's story breaks my heart because she was trying to do everything right. She thought she was protecting her health, but in reality, she was unknowingly harming herself. So how do you protect yourself? The answer is simple but powerful. Always warm up before stretching. Start with 5 to 10 minutes of gentle movement like slow walking around the house, light arm swings, or marching in place. This gradually wakes up your circulation, widens your vessels, and gets blood flowing smoothly. Then, once your body is warm, you can safely do gentle stretches to improve flexibility. And here's another golden rule. Save static stretching for after your activity, not before. Stretching after exercise helps muscles relax and prevent stiffness, while stretching before can put cold, vulnerable muscles and vessels under dangerous strain. Think of your body like a car on a winter morning. You wouldn't slam the accelerator the moment you turn the key. You'd let the engine warm up first. Your brain and vessels deserve the same patience. So remember, never stretch cold. Always warm up gently, then stretch. By making this small change, you reduce one more hidden risk that could steal your independence. Now, we've reached the final movement in our list. And this one might surprise you the most, because it's not about bending, lifting, or stretching. It's about balance. And for seniors, practicing balance exercises without the right support can create a dangerous loop where a fall doesn't just hurt your bones, it can trigger a stroke. The ninth and final movement on our list may seem like the most harmless of all. In fact, many health experts encourage it. You've probably heard advice like, practice standing on one leg to improve balance, or try a wobble board to keep your core strong. At first glance, these suggestions sound sensible, but for seniors, doing balance exercises without proper support can open the door to something far more dangerous than just a fall. It can actually create what I call the fall-stroke loop. Here's what happens. When you attempt balance exercises without support, like standing on one leg in the middle of the room or wobbling on an unstable surface, you dramatically increase your risk of falling. Now, most people assume the danger of a fall is simply breaking a hip or hitting your head. And yes, those are terrible risks. But there's another layer few people talk about. The body responds to a fall with a massive stress surge. Your blood pressure shoots up, your heart races, and your blood becomes more prone to clotting. That combination creates the perfect environment for stroke. And even if you don't fall completely, the mere act of losing balance, jerking suddenly, or straining your vessels during the stumble can trigger clot formation. Seniors, especially those with fragile arteries, are the most vulnerable to this chain reaction. Let me tell you about Walter Harris. Walter was 81 years old, a proud Navy veteran. He believed in staying active and strong. Every morning he practiced standing on one leg while brushing his teeth, something he read about in a senior fitness magazine. One morning he wobbled, lost his balance, and fell hard against the bathroom counter. The doctors later explained that the trauma and the stress response of the fall had triggered clot formation. By the next morning, Walter had suffered a stroke that left him struggling to speak clearly. He survived, but he now relies heavily on speech therapy and daily assistance. Walter's story shows us the hidden truth. Sometimes it's not the fall itself that steals your independence. It's what the fall sets off inside your body. The clotting cascade, the vessel spasm, the silent thief we call stroke. So what's the safer path? The answer isn't to stop practicing balance altogether. Balance is incredibly important, especially as we age. But it must be practiced with wisdom, not bravado. Always use support. Stand near a sturdy wall, a countertop, or a heavy chair. If you want to practice one-leg stands, lightly touch the wall with your fingertips so you can steady yourself at any moment. If you're working with a trainer, make sure they understand senior physiology, not just general fitness. And here's another safe alternative. Try seated core movements or gentle Tai Chi. Tai Chi, in particular, is a beautiful practice for seniors. It strengthens balance without demanding risky, unsupported positions. Remember this. Support is not weakness, it's wisdom. Using a wall, a chair, or a rail isn't a sign you're fragile. It's a sign you care enough about your health to protect your brain. Don't let pride push you into risky movements. Independence isn't about proving you can do everything alone. It's about making smart choices that keep you strong for years to come. So as we close this list of 9, everyday movements that could trigger a stroke, take a moment to reflect. Toe touches, inverted yoga poses, heavy lifting, sudden standing, walking in the heat, neck circles, high-intensity intervals, cold stretching, and unsupported balance exercises. Each one may look harmless at first glance, but for seniors, they can become silent traps, movements that quietly set the stage for tragedy. But now you know the truth. And knowledge is power. By replacing these risky habits with safer alternatives, you're not just protecting your body. You're protecting your brain, your independence, your memories, and your ability to live life on your terms. And in the next section, I'll give you the exact safe movement guidelines, a blueprint you can follow every day to keep moving, keep active, and keep safe, without putting your brain in jeopardy. You've just learned about 9 everyday movements that can increase the risk of stroke in seniors. And I know it may sound a little frightening, but let me tell you something very important. Movement itself is not the enemy. In fact, movement is life. What matters is how you move. The right kind of movement keeps your circulation strong, your brain nourished, and your independence intact. The wrong kind of movement, as you've seen, can create disaster. So let's turn now from warning to wisdom. I want to give you a set of safe movement guidelines, practical rules you can follow every single day to protect your brain and body. Think of this as your new exercise blueprint, designed with the unique needs of seniors in mind. First, always warm up before you move. This is where so many people go wrong. They think stretching is a warm-up. It isn't. When your muscles and blood vessels are cold, forcing them into sudden stretches or movements can create strain and turbulence in your blood flow. For seniors, this turbulence can trigger clot formation. Instead, begin with 5 to 10 minutes of gentle movement. Walk slowly around the house. Swing your arms gently at your sides. March softly in place. Let your circulation wake up gradually. Once your body is warm, then you can stretch. Second, use support without apology. I cannot stress this enough. I know many of you value your independence. You don't want to look fragile, but holding on to a chair, a railing, or a wall while exercising isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It prevents unnecessary falls, reduces stress on your vessels, and gives your body the safety net it deserves. Remember, true independence comes from staying safe enough to keep living on your own terms. Third, prioritize steady, consistent movement over intensity. When you were younger, you may have been able to push your heart rate to the max, run wind sprints, or lift heavy weights without thinking twice. But after 60, your arteries lose some of their flexibility. They can't handle those extreme spikes the way they once did. That doesn't mean you stop moving. It means you move smarter. Choose steady-paced activities like walking, tai chi, gentle water aerobics, or light resistance bands. Your brain thrives on stable oxygen supply, not sudden roller coasters of blood pressure. Fourth, practice strategic hydration. Seniors are more prone to dehydration, not just because of natural aging, but also because many medications affect fluid balance. And dehydration is one of the sneakiest stroke triggers because it thickens the blood. So make hydration part of your daily ritual. Drink water before and after activity. Don't wait until you feel thirsty. That's already too late. And if you're walking in warm weather, consider adding a pinch of electrolytes or a hydration drink designed for seniors. Your brain will thank you for it. Fifth, never hold your breath during exertion. Many people, especially when lifting or pushing, unconsciously hold their breath. This creates massive internal pressure, the kind that can damage fragile vessels or dislodge plaque. Instead, practice conscious breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let your breath guide your effort. Movement should feel like a flow, not a strain. Sixth, stretch after activity, not before. Once your muscles are warm and circulation is active, stretching becomes both safe and beneficial. Gentle stretches after walking or light exercise help maintain flexibility without stressing cold muscles or rigid vessels. Remember, warm first, stretch later. Seventh, pay attention to subtle warnings. Dizziness, unusual fatigue, chest pressure, or sudden weakness aren't just signs of aging. They are red flags. They are your body's way of saying, stop, breathe, hydrate, rest, seek help if needed. Don't brush them off, don't try to power through, and don't assume it's nothing. Many seniors who experienced a stroke ignored these subtle signs the day before. Don't make that mistake. Eighth, schedule your main movement in the morning. Here's why. Blood circulation naturally slows at night. Your brain and body are most alert and responsive in the morning hours. That makes it the safest and most effective time for walking, exercising, or stretching. By contrast, late evening workouts put unnecessary strain on a body that is winding down for rest. Protect yourself by aligning your activity with your body's natural rhythms. And finally, consult your doctor regularly about your exercise routine. Every senior is unique. Some of you take blood pressure medication, others may be on blood thinners, some may have diabetes, arthritis, or prior heart conditions. All of these factors change how your body responds to movement. Never assume a generic exercise plan fits your needs. Bring your doctor into the conversation. A few minutes of professional guidance can prevent years of suffering. When you follow these safe movement guidelines, you unlock the best of both worlds. You keep moving, keeping your muscles, heart, and brain strong, while also protecting yourself from the hidden dangers that come with aging. Remember this, you are not fragile, but you are different. Your body doesn't respond the way it did at 40 or 50, and that's okay. It's not a limitation, it's simply a new stage of wisdom. Movement is still your ally, but it must be precise movement, guided movement, wise movement. So let me ask you, are you ready to start moving with wisdom instead of risk? Are you ready to protect not just your body, but your brain, your independence, and your memories? Because in just a moment, we're going to wrap this up with a powerful conclusion that reframes everything we've talked about today. You've heard the warnings. You've seen the stories. You now know that 9 ordinary movements, the ones we've taken for granted our whole lives, can change everything in an instant if done carelessly after 60. But let me tell you something important. Movement is not the enemy. In fact, it's your greatest ally. The danger lies not in moving, but in moving without awareness, without adjustment, without respect for how your body has changed. You are not fragile. You are not broken, but you are different. What your body could absorb at 40 may now require caution at 70. That doesn't mean you stop living. It means you start living wisely. And wisdom, my friends, is power. Think of it this way. Your brain is the command center of your entire life. It holds your memories, your personality, your ability to laugh, to hug, to love, to recognize the faces of the people who mean everything to you. That brain is your greatest treasure. And treasures are meant to be protected. One wrong movement can unravel decades of vibrant life. But wise movements can preserve years of clarity, independence, and joy. I've seen it firsthand. Patients who ignored the warnings, who thought, it won't happen to me, and within seconds, their lives were split into before and after. I've also seen the opposite. Seniors who took these lessons to heart, who made small adjustments, who embraced support, who hydrated, who breathed, who respected their limits. Those are the ones still gardening, still dancing, still driving, still telling their stories around the dinner table. So here is the truth. This is not about limitation. This is about precision, about dignity, about protecting the decades of experience you've worked so hard to earn. You have lived through eras of change. You have raised families, built careers, served your communities, survived hardships, and celebrated joys. You have every right to keep living on your own terms. But to do that, you must protect the brain that makes all of it possible. So let me leave you with this wisdom. Movement is medicine, but only when taken in the right dose, at the right time, in the right way. The wrong prescription can harm you. The right prescription can save you. Protect your balance. Protect your breath. Protect your hydration. Protect your brain. Because the years ahead are still yours to shape. Don't let a single careless movement take that away. Now I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. Out of everything you've just learned, what struck you the most? Was it the hidden risk of a movement you've done for years without thinking? Was it the story of someone like you who suffered when it could have been prevented? Or was it the realization that safety doesn't mean weakness, it means wisdom? I want you to write it down in the comments. Share your most profound insight. From today's video, tell us what change you're going to make starting today. Are you going to rise more slowly from your chair? Are you going to hydrate before your morning walk? Are you going to swap intensity for steadiness? Every small change matters, and if this video helped you, type the number 1 in the comments. If it didn't, type 0. That way, we'll know how to serve you better. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Because we are building a community here, a circle of support where seniors can live longer, stronger, and sharper together. Your journey doesn't end here. It begins here, with wisdom, with awareness, with safe movement, with a brain protected like the treasure it is. So go forward today. Move with purpose. Move with care. Move with wisdom. Because your brain, your independence, and your future are worth it.